Expired. A joke.
You'll see.
They mocked her ID, called it fake, expired, a joke, until the scanner beeped, the gold emblem flared, and every door in the VA facility slammed shut, because they had just awakened a protocol meant for the end of the world. The rain on the parking lot looked like a black mirror, catching every ambulance light and every nervous reflection. She walked in like a shadow that remembered this place better than the walls did. The badge around her neck was old, too old, edges splitting, plastic fogged from years of breath and time. The clerk behind the glass window glanced up at the board. Expression, took the card with 2 fingers like it might stain him, and smirked at the photo. A younger face, cropped to tight, eyes that didn't belong to anyone you'd meet in daylight. Expired, he announced, loud enough for the nearby guards to grin. Way expired. I don't even think our system can read this dinosaur. She didn't answer. She didn't blink. She simply slid the card back toward the barcode reader and said, softly, scan it. He rolled his eyes. The reader's light moved like a slow comet across the scratched surface, a chirp, a longer tone, and then the screen froze. The cursor stuttered. The room changed. A gold emblem unfolded on the monitor, embossed, intricate, shifting. It wasn't a logo. It wasn't a seal. It was a living cipher, the kind of symbol that told you, without words, that everything you thought you knew about authority was a cardboard cutout. The fluorescent lights flickered, and the laughter bled out of the room all at once, as if the emblem itself drank sound. Somewhere above the ceiling, heavy magnets locked. Hallway doors slammed in segments, thud, thud, thud like a heartbeat. Ceiling ribs, red strobes replaced the quiet white light, and a cold, automated voice said the words that no one in that building had ever heard in real life. Flag Protocol Alpha 5. Stand clear of all egress points. Await instruction. The clerk looked at her, and something sour turned in his expression. A guard's radio crackled with 5 voices at once. A nurse stopped mid-step, a cup of water trembling in her hand. The scanner's chime still echoed in the clerk's skull like a bell that wouldn't stop ringing. This is a test, right? He said. To nobody in particular. No, she answered. Her name on the sign-in sheet looked like an apology, Elena Crowe. But the man who arrived in a black uniform with silver at the collar did not say Elena. When he saw her, he said something else, and his voice cracked when he said it, as if the name carried winter in it. Mara. Veiled silence widened. The guards, who had been half a laugh from dismissing her, now shifted their weight like cadets, caught stealing from the armory. The commander's eyes flicked to the emblem, then to the clock that had appeared beneath it, 47 minutes and counting down. He ordered the lobby cleared. No one argued. He didn't even raise his voice when the door sealed. The rain outside sounded louder, more deliberate. The commander didn't sit. He stood with the habit of a man who trusted walls only if he'd inspected the rebar himself. You can't be here, he said. You can't be alive. I agree, she replied. And yet, what did you just trigger? You did, she said. When you scanned the ID, he didn't touch the card. He didn't need to. The gold emblem pulsed, and the room felt a half-degree colder with every heartbeat of light. He glanced at the lower corner of the screen, small text that wasn't text at all. Just a suggestion of meaning that your mind tried to turn into letters and failed. I've never seen Alpha 5, he said. Not to her, but to the air. I thought it was a ghost story they told new hires to make them take the playbook seriously. It is a ghost story, she said, and the ghost is the reason I'm here. He stared at her face and saw the younger photograph behind it, like a faint constellation under the skin. All the files said she had died in a street accident that didn't happen. All the files said her clearances were sunsetted, her projects dissolved. Her pay rolled into a line item called infrastructure maintenance, but the emblem didn't care what the files said. The emblem remembered what the people who wrote the files wanted to forget. What does Alpha 5 do? He asked. Finally, it closes the exits, she said, and then it closes the lies. He didn't like the sound of that. He looked at the timer again. 46 minutes. Are we in danger? Yes, she said, without drama. But not from the rain. He wanted more than that. But every question he considered turned his stomach, so he asked none of them and opened a line to the operations floor instead. Voices came back thin with static. The emblem was throttling channels as it propagated. He recognized the shape of a takeover, and that frightened him less than the elegance of it. Takeovers could be brash. This was almost tender, like a hand catching fine china before it fell. He glanced at the name on her sign-in. Elena Crowe. She shook her head once. Not today. Then tell me who you are today. I'm the custodian, she said. Of what? Of what's left. The clock ticked. The building inhaled and exhaled with the rhythm of events changing modes. He gestured to the screen. We're locked down. We have patients who need dialysis, outpatient meds. People who came here to breathe and not to be inside a nightmare. If you can end this, end it. I didn't start it, she said. I woke it. Woke what? The will. He didn't curse out loud, but he wanted to. Will was a word that belonged in lawyers' offices and family fights, not on a system monitor that could seal elevator shafts with a thought. Explain. The ID is older than the system, she said. Older than your tenure. Older than the seal on your uniform when you scanned it. The building recognized a signature that predates its admin tree. That signature is bound to a directive. The directive is bound to a condition. The condition was met this morning. What condition? Betrayal, she said. So simply it felt like a hand on the back of his neck. He checked the camera feeds on his tablet. Hallways, stairwells, a man in maintenance gray staring up at a lens as if it could tell him something. A medication nurse counting vials in a locked room with her mouth moving prayer. Protocol? The emblem had nested in every display now. No matter which camera he tapped, it was there in a corner, quiet, breathing. What betrays what? He asked. People betray oaths, she said. Systems betray people. The power dipped and recovered. The commander's eyes narrowed. He had seen roles like that before, the way a grid made room for a priority burn. What did you point it at? A list, she said, and a faucet. He understood list. He didn't like faucet. What's coming out of the faucet? Names, she said. The kind that buy boats. He waited. The room made him wait. She didn't rush, and it made the explanation feel heavier, like she was laying bricks. For years, she continued, someone used this facility as a feeder line, cherry-picking records, selling veteran data to entities that don't send thank you cards, predators with nice stationery. It started small. It always starts small. Then the faucet turned, and it never turned back. You're saying we have a breach, he said. You're saying you're polite, she replied. He bristled at that, because he was. The habit felt useless here. Who is the wrong question, she said. We make cartoons of villains so we can pretend we'd recognize them. This wasn't one person. It was a relay. Someone opens a door, someone else holds it. A third person says they didn't see anything at all. The only reason Alpha 5 exists is because there was a time when the relay ran the building. When? He asked. Before your time, she said, and he both believed and resented it. The timer bled another minute. He thought about the world beyond the glass traffic lights, grocery lines, the taste of coffee that knew nothing about emblems. He wanted to be angry at her for bringing the storm inside, but storms arrive on their own schedule. And sometimes the only thing you can accuse the messenger of is not arriving sooner. He pointed at the card. Why does it answer to you? It doesn't, she said. It answers to the office I held, and the person who held it before me, and before them. It belongs to the chain, not to the hand. What office? She let her eyes rest on the emblem as if it were an old colleague. Custodian, she said again. When systems lie, the custodian tells the truth. When ledgers burn, the custodian reads what's left in the ash. When people who served are turned into product, the custodian turns off the faucet. You're telling me this building is about to empty its secrets? He said. No, she said. I'm telling you it already. Has his tablet chirped. New file, no sender. He opened it and saw a ledger that did not look like a ledger, it looked like a crime scene. Names, dates, exports, requests that were not requests so much as invoices. He scrolled and swallowed against a drought in his throat. The facility he managed had been used like a public well, that someone had secretly piped into a private pool. He didn't know the people behind the pipe, but he recognized the plumbing. Who did this? He asked again, and the word sounded smaller the second time. Enough people to make it plausible. She said, not enough to make it unstoppable. He found a familiar name on the list, a procurement officer who hosted potlucks and had a laugh that crackled like vinyl. He kept scrolling because he couldn't afford to stop at one person he liked. The document kept unrolling like a magician's scarf that turned into a shroud at the end. He looked up, and Alpha 5 keeps the doors shut while the building remembers, she said. Remembers what? Where it hid the keys. He wanted to pace, but the room discouraged motion, and the emblem punished theatrics. He settled for breathing, until air felt like something he deserved. All right, he said. Let's say I believe you. Let's say the faucet is real, and the list is real, and the people who laughed at your card this morning were the last people who will ever laugh at it. What happens when that timer hits 0? The lights hummed a note lower. The emblem brightened. She answered without ornament. The chain transfers. To who? That's why I'm here, she said. Because if the chain transfers to the wrong hands, the faucet opens again, and next time, it won't close. Who decides? The building, she said, and me, and you. He almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because he couldn't think of anything else to do with his mouth. I didn't sign up for this. You did, she said gently. There was just fine print. He thought of the oath he had, raised a hand for the same one that sounded solemn and abstract the day he spoke it, and ordinary and daily on the days he tried to keep it. He thought of the veterans in the waiting room, one man who counted tiles to keep panic at bay, one woman who carried a photo inside her sleeve like a talisman. He thought of the line between safety and exploitation and how thin it becomes when nobody is looking and everybody is tired. What do you need me to do? He asked. Hold your people, she said, and let the building speak. Hold them how? Kindly, she said, and without exit. He made the calls. He watched 3 supervisors turn into the best versions of themselves in under a minute. He watched one supervisor make a second call he shouldn't have made. The emblem pulsed once, and the second call didn't go anywhere. The supervisor looked at his phone like it had betrayed him, which it had. Down the hall, the medication nurse finished counting vials and looked up, as if she'd heard her name spoken from somewhere she couldn't place. On the second floor, a janitor turned off his buffer, leaned on the handle, and closed his eyes. People who did not know the word Alpha 5 felt the shape of it anyway. The commander, his name was Dyer. The name fit like a glove. That had learned his knuckles stood with the custodian. And watched the building think. The emblem was not a symbol. It was a process. It crawled through the ducts, through the fiber, through the places you could only see when the power was off and the flashlight battery flickered. It lifted things into the light that had been kept in the shade for exactly as long as it took to pay a mortgage, 31 minutes. Dyer opened another feed and watched a small group congregate near the south stairwell, as if the door might change its mind if they reminded it of how nice they were. He dispatched a team, not with rifles, but with chairs and bottled water and the kind of steady, low voice you use to talk men back from ledges. Nobody's under arrest, he told them, and meant it. Nobody's a suspect. We are not going to sort this out in a hallway. Please sit. The list on his tablet grew teeth. It cross-referenced itself, drew lines between tasks and timestamps, and when it found a gap it left it blank instead of guessing. That was the strangest part, the honesty of not knowing. Systems like this usually rush to fill silence. This one made room for it. Dyer glanced at Mara. Elena, whatever name could survive the day. You staged your own death. Yes, she said. Because of this. Because of everything around this, she said. Because there are times when the only way to keep the door from being propped open is to become the draft they can't find. He considered the cost of living. As a rumor, he considered the cruelty of being right in rooms where no one wanted the truth, and the loneliness of being right in rooms where everyone did. He felt older. Why today? He asked. Because the faucet moved, she said. The relay tried. A new pipe. The pipe leads to an ocean, not a pool. Once it reaches the ocean, you don't close it. You just drown slower. Who's the ocean? You know better than to ask. He did. He hated that he did. 22 minutes. Somewhere in the building, a printer whirred to life. Then another, and another. The emblem didn't just live on screens. It had no aesthetic preferences. It pushed paper into trays with a grace that felt like judgment. On those pages, receipts with the decimals moved, log entries with the adjectives removed, requisitions with the euphemisms stripped. Dyer sent runners. The runners came back with pages that smelled like warm dust and tasted like copper. When you read them aloud, Mara opened the first stack and scanned with the speed of someone who didn't read. She absorbed. She flipped. Found a line that hid. In plain sight, set the page aside. This one, she said, and then, a minute later, and this, until the stack became two stacks, the past, and the past that refused to stay polite. 19 minutes. In a room without windows, an old man, in a Vietnam cap, held a styrofoam cup with both hands like it was a baby bird. He watched the red light blink. He didn't understand the emblem, but he recognized the feeling of a lockdown. He had lived inside longer ones with fewer exits and more rain. He nodded to no one and set his cup down without spilling. Then he folded his hands and waited, because waiting is an art when you've had to learn it. 13 minutes. Dyer's phone buzzed with a message. He couldn't place a channel he didn't remember creating. The text was 5 words. Do you accept custodianship, Commander? He looked at the emblem. It was bright enough now to leave an afterimage when you blinked. He didn't answer. The message repeated, not insistent, just available. The way a door is available even if you don't want to walk through it. He looked at Mara. If I say yes, what happens to you? I finish, she said. And if I say no, I finish, she said again. And he understood the difference. What changed was not her end, but his beginning. 10 minutes. The supervisor who had tried to make the second call asked to use the bathroom. Dyer said yes and sent an escort who was kind and quiet and stood outside the stall like a tree. That had made a promise. When the supervisor came out, his hands shook, and not because he'd been caught. He had not been caught. He had been seen. 8 minutes. The emblem did something new. It breathed. Yes, but now it also listened. Dyer could feel it, the way you can feel someone across the room lean toward a story. He straightened the stacks of paper because he needed to put his hands on evidence that didn't ghost through fibers. Mara watched him with the soft attention you give someone at the end of a long road. You remember too well. He thought about the word custodian. He thought about mops and keys and closets that smelled like lemon and old water. He thought about the other meaning, the one the building was using, the person who holds the thing that would break if anyone else held it wrong. 5 minutes. He tapped the message. Yes. He didn't expect a sound, and none came. He didn't expect light, and there wasn't any, not beyond the emblem's steady glow. What he felt was weight, redistributed, like a shelf that had been empty suddenly remembering the books. It was built to hold. His badge on his chest warmed, not heat contact, as if the building reached out and touched the metal and said, "I know you now." 3 minutes. Mara set the last page down. "It will ask me once more," she said, "for the last decision." What decision? Whether to burn. His heart made a private shape in his chest. Burn what? The paths, she said. Every route in or out that doesn't belong to the living. Every tunnel built under the oath. Every dark hallway, with a lock that responds to money instead of names. And if you say yes, people who did this will not sleep well, she said. People who might do it will have to find a different building or a different hobby. And if you say no, the faucet will rust shut, she said, until the next hand brings oil. He stared at the emblem and thought of rust with reverence. He thought of how much of his job was oil and how much of it should have been rust. What would you choose? What I was trained to choose, she said. But training and tenderness fight at the end. He didn't ask which side she would let win. It wasn't his question to ask. 1 minute. The room felt like a breath held with skill. Somewhere, a child cried and was comforted. Somewhere else, a vending machine swallowed $1 and decided to give it back. The building settled into its bones. The emblem brightened one last time. A line unspooled on Dyer's screen like a signature remembering how to be a name. Mara Vale last action. The cursor blinked with the patience of geology. She stepped closer to the monitor. The old photo on the ID card watching the living face like a guardian. She did not ask Dyer what to do. She did not ask the building for permission. She laid 2 fingers against the edge of the desk, the way you might touch a friend's sleeve before a goodbye, and said, very quietly, seal what hurts, save who can be saved, and leave the door open for the ones who want to come home. The emblem considered tenderness. Then it translated. The timer reached 0. Nothing exploded. No sirens ruptured. Eardrums. Doors did not fly off hinges. What changed was subtler and more final. The invisible paths the relay had used were gone. Not locked, gone. The kind of gone that couldn't be reverse engineered with a screwdriver and a favor. The kind of gone that leaves behind a silence you can measure your heartbeat against. On Dyer's tablet, a new document appeared. Custodianship. Transferred. He scrolled. Names. Not of culprits, of caretakers. People the building trusted. People. It would ask first, next time, when a faucet rattled or a ledger smoked. He saw his name there and felt less like a hero than like a man who had been handed a broom made of light. Mara exhaled, and the exhale sounded like a season changing. She picked up the ID card. The plastic looked older now, as if the job it was made for had finally used it up. Dyer stopped her without thinking. Wait, if the chain transferred, what happens to that? It retires, she said. So do you. I already did, she said, with a dry smile that was almost a kindness. The red lights softened back to the hard white of fluorescence. The heavy magnets released their hum. Doors eased. People exhaled the way you do after turbulence touches. Wheels to runway. The old man in the Vietnam cap sipped his water and nodded, as if some private calculation had come out even. The supervisor who had made the second call asked to speak with Dyer and did. And the conversation was not gentle, but it was honest. In the lobby, the clerk stood from behind the glass and approached the desk where everything had happened. He looked smaller, the way people do when jokes run out. I'm sorry, he said, to the air, to the room, to her, to himself. Mara didn't answer. She didn't need him to be better in a sentence. Dyer walked her to the door because there was no etiquette for this. So he chose the oldest one he knew. Rain gathered on the awning like a second set of lights. He wanted to say something that would bind the moment to the place so it wouldn't wash away. He found something that was almost right. "What do I do if it happens again?" he asked. "It won't," she said. "Not like this, not here. And if it tries, you'll feel the draft," she said, and turned the ID over in her hand, as if it were a coin from a country that no longer existed. Closed the window. She stepped into the rain without flinching. She walked the way people walk when they know streets like lines on a palm. A car pulled up without headlights. The driver didn't look at her. She didn't look at him. She got in and left like a comma leaving a sentence that had found its period. Inside, the printers quieted. The emblem faded from the corners of screens, but not from the air. The building remembered what it had done, and in the remembering, it made a promise to itself. Dyer stood in the lobby alone for a long breath, and then not alone, because a nurse came and asked him if they were clear to resume the medication run. He said yes, and his voice was steady enough to hold a tray. He convened his supervisors and showed them the stack of pages that had divided themselves. He did not read the list of names of culprits, because there wasn't one. The building had chosen to leave a different kind of record, not who to hunt, but what to stop. He liked that. He would have to learn to love it. When he finally sat down, in his office, the message returned on his screen like a gentle knock. "Welcome, custodian." No signature, no flourish. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The answer would be whether the faucets stayed closed, and whether the people who came to this building felt like water was for drinking, not for drowning. He turned off his tablet and tucked the pages into a drawer that used to hold staplers. He stood, because he had work that didn't require words. He went to the waiting room and called the old man in the Vietnam cap by his name, and the old man stood straighter than his back allowed and followed. At the desk, the clerk printed a new ID for a woman who had lost hers in a move, and when the machine spat it out, he looked at the photo like a responsibility instead of a chore. Out in the rain, somewhere on a road that didn't appear on maps, a woman who had been a roomer and a rank and a guardian twice over, held an old piece of plastic up to the gray light and watched the gold underneath it cool. She thought about the first time she had activated Alpha 5 and how much fire there had been then and how much less it had changed. She thought about rust and faucets and the fine print on oaths. She thought about how systems either make it easier to be kind or easier to be cruel, and how everything after that is statistics. She slid the card into a pocket it had lived in for a long time and would not live in again. She closed her eyes and let the car carry her forward. When she opened them, the road had turned into something that looked like a promise. No one cheered. There were no headlines. Tomorrow, the building would smell like lemon and old water again, and veterans would tell stories, and not all of them would be tidy. But somewhere in the circuitry, a door had been bricked over with a material money can't dissolve. Somewhere in the paper trays, the dust had learned a new shape, and in an office where the fluorescent light hummed like it always had, a man read the word custodian on a monitor and, without speaking, said yes again, because some answers aren't given once, they're renewed. If you watch all the way here, tell me this: did you feel the draft when the door opened? And did you feel it close? Subscribe if you did, because next time, when the emblem breathes again in another place, you'll want to hear the story of how a ghost taught a building how to tell the truth.